if an athlete can get more foot to the ground, and again, this is where that tomato sauce comes in. If an athlete can get more foot to the ground, I'm a bigger fan of more foot to the ground. It enables them, right? Because the whole idea for leg drive is I want to teach this athlete, I want you to take this whole apparatus and jam it that way. So typically, if they can get the whole foot to the ground, they can do more of that. However, like for me on this particular bench, if on a Forza, I'm a flat-footed bencher because I'm fat enough that I sink into the Forza pad enough that I actually get my feet completely driven in. Some of my best benches have been on Forza benches because of that. It also grabs my traps really well, right? The big fat pad. And so it enables me when I jam to do it. But on this particular bench, I can't get flat-footed without losing a lot of my other mechanical advantages. So I end up on the balls of my feet. Now to Frank's point, let me tell you where I don't like a lifter. I don't like a lifter on their toes. Ball of the foot, I can still, if I was gonna jump, right? No, but you would jump flat-footed maybe. You would jump from the balls of your feet, developing power. Nobody would jump off their toes. And so when I see a lifter who gets their foot so far back that they're on the toe, what we're typically dealing with there is a person who's trading off between the biomechanics of the arch versus the power of the leg drive. Now, if I get a monster arch who has really perfected it, they're sometimes going to give up leg drive to decrease the range of motion that is arch, which, by the way, this leads me into the next thing I want to talk about. We're going to talk briefly about the difference between flat back and arch benching. Is one better? No. Eric Spoto, 722. Anybody? Flat or arch? Flat. Jeremy Hornstra, right? 675. Flat or arch? Flat. So you would think flat must be better. No, because go to the ladies' side. And a lot of your April Schumacher, right? 225 and 104, 103 pounds, whatever she is. Flat or arch? Big arch. Mary Yuma, I can't say her name, the Russian chick who literally looks like an upside down U when she benches, right? There's no leg drive in her at all. Because what she's done is she's literally taken the rule of the bench and just said, I'm gonna keep my butt touching. I'm gonna literally take the arch where I'm gonna move this bar now 3 to 4 inches. And so because of that, she doesn't care about leg drive. Now, powerlifting is about winning. Powerlifting is absolutely about winning. It's not about who's stronger. So let's talk about the advantage of arch benching. And by the way, I'm a flat back. I actually, one time, it was funny, Critical Bench did one of those things where they try to provoke people. And they put out a thing that said, what are the biggest bench press mistakes? And all these people are responding. And I happen to notice Jeremy. Jeremy and I are pretty good friends, Hornstra. For those who don't know, Jeremy is arguably the best bench presser in the world based on his size versus power. And so Jeremy wrote, flat backed, narrow grip, flat feet, I guess I'm effed. Right? And he wrote that in. And like 3 people right behind him had no idea who Jeremy Hornstra is. So they're like, well, you really want to work on an arch? You really want to, and all this advice starts coming, right? And they're telling Jeremy what to do. So I respond right after seeing it, and I couldn't help myself. And I respond, man, me too. Narrow for my size, flat back, flat-footed. God, I don't know what I'm going to do. And 25 people are telling me what I should do to fix the bench, right? All right, so it's and Jeremy and I are going back and forth like, oh, thank you. We're having a really good time with it. And then somebody like ruined our parade and was like, these are 2 pretty good bench pressers. They're making you look stupid. And then everyone shut up. really happened. And the point to that is, though, is that you guys used, and I'll use a little bit of Fred here. This is as smart as I get. What's the formula for force? What's the formula for force? Right? We got time, right? Right? Time and power, right? And the amount of movement you do with it, right? And the time it takes you to move it is your formula for force, right? So if I'm an arch bencher and I need to move 315 pounds and I need to move 315 based on gravity, it takes the same amount of, right, power. and I only move it less, am I using more or less force? It takes less force to move it because I'm moving it less distance. So that person, by mathematical concept, would be able to do more weight by moving it a shorter distance. Make sense? Jen's best bench, Jen uses a relatively arch setup and a relatively wide grip because Jen capitalizes and maximizes on the decrease in range of motion. That's just what she does to win in powerlifting. So arch is not bad. There's nothing wrong with arch benching. An arch, if you can get your arch, is a tremendous way to decrease the range of motion and be more powerful. If you can't build the arch without giving up your mechanical advantages, then you should attempt to go ahead and do flat back benching. A lot of times I'll have a lifter come in and they'll create this huge arch and they get this monster arch, but then the only way they can do it is all these weird grips and they can't hit and they can't be powerful, they can't tighten their back, they can't do any of these things. And then you have to say to that lifter, look, let's try a flat back bench and see how we do. Conversely, you get a guy like Vince, you would think flat back all day long, and then all of a sudden he comes in and he's able to pop this arch and you're like, well damn, he just decreased his range of motion, 3 inches down, 3 inches up. He needs to use that arch. So there's nothing wrong with arch benching. And again, the idea in powerlifting is, right, to win. The idea is to lift the most weight you can. For hypertrophy trainers, arch benching doesn't make as much sense because the goal for hypertrophy, right, should be to get as most work we can in. So you should probably flatten it out and get more range of motion for your athlete. We okay with that? All right. Last thing I'm really going to do is I want to talk about some ways to fix the 4 main troubleshooting problems in bench and the ways and some exercises that I like to use for them. So the first problem that most people have is just overall body tightness. Overall body tightness is a big problem. Every time you see a lifter, I've got a young kid in here right now, I love him to death, but it just drops it in and I cringe, I go outside, I throw up in my mouth a little, I come back, you know, and I want to hit him with the sledgehammer and get him to work on it, but we're trying. Couple exercises you can do to teach a person who has overall body tightness issues. One-arm bench press. Especially, by the way, if this is a new lifter, right? If this is like a 500-pound bench presser, it's hard to get a 250-pound dumbbell in their hand. But if you're dealing with a newer or younger lifter or smaller lifter, a one-arm bench press is a great way to work on overall body tightness. Anybody know why? Anybody done a one-arm bench press ever? I severed this bicep tendon with a tire, strongman, and I severed this one deadlifting. They did way better on the scar on the right arm than the left one. And in both of those times, I came back and I did one-arm work really heavy to keep anything I could in part of the process. When you one-arm bench, what do you have to do with your feet? Yeah, I challenge you that if you one-arm bench with your feet not stable and your back not tight, you go over. It's just basic physics 101. So if I get a lifter who just can't get tight, one-arm bench can be a great way to say, look, you have to understand that we got to get the feet pinned into the ground. We got to get the traps pinned into the bench. And even for you arch benchers, is your butt, even though it's touching the bench, really pinned into the bench? Where should the pressure be coming from, your butt or your feet? Should be the feet. A perfect arch bencher should be sitting their butt on the bench, but all the pressure should be in their legs because they're trying to still, get that pressure in for the tripod. One last thing about arch benching that a lot of people, it's something I hear and I forgot to say it, so I do want to tell you guys. You'll hear people say that arch bending is bad because of the load it puts on the spine. Anybody heard that? You'll hear people argue it, right? Which way does your spine naturally load, right? And I always say this wrong, but it's lordsis, right? Isn't that the word, right? You have a natural curve to your spine, right? And your spine naturally loads that direction. If arch back benching is bad, when you're really not loading your spine that much, because remember, where's still the weight? The weight's here, gravity takes the weight this way, right? And I'm only even loading the spine any time at all when I do what? When I pulse for a half a second. If that's bad for the body, what is squatting doing to your body? I'd remind you in squatting, you're gonna have more of a load on that same exact arch. You're gonna literally have you're putting your body in between the bar and gravity to the ground. And so anytime somebody, and by the way, I'm a flat back bencher, so I'm not saying arch is what you have to do, but when I hear coaches tell people, you don't want to arch back bench because it's bad for your back. I go back outside, I puke in my mouth a little, right, and I just come back in, and I typically don't say things, I just kind of let people do their thing, but if you're trying to coach people, those kind of things really hurt the heart for me. Like, it's so against the science of what we do. Like, if you're going to tell somebody that an arch bench is bad for your back, then they better never get under a squat bar ever, much less 1,000 pounds or whatever the case. So anyway, so back to the body tightness. One of the things I love for body tightness, I do love one-arm bench press. It's a great way to fix overall body tightness issues. I like chaos push-ups. Anybody know what a chaos push-up is? Fred was asking about bands earlier. Anybody? You take a band, you hang it from a rack, either from like the safety arms, right? Or across the pins, and you put it across, and you make somebody literally do push-ups to that band with their feet up on a bench. Why is that gonna help overall body tightness? Because if you ain't tight when you're on a band, you're gonna fall. So they will very quickly learn, I have to tighten everything up to take the variability out of this exercise, because I can't be loose here and have that looseness across there. So it's a good way to teach an athlete, look, you have to learn to tighten this all up. It's a way to cheat a little bit. You can do the same thing without risking their teeth. And Fred was asking about bands. I will put a band underneath a bar. I don't typically go one to each side. I'll typically go a band across. And I will put a band with lightweight on there too, because it also will teach them, right? The band will go like this. And so I'm a big believer in one band across underneath. I don't like the two bands as much, because when the bands are independent, it doesn't necessarily help them as much with that tension. It's not as constant. I prefer the one band technique. If they're getting strong, but they're still loose, go to a bigger band. Don't necessarily go to bigger weight, go to a bigger band, because the band is gonna promote the instability. The weight is just proving who's stronger on an exercise that nobody in history does for competitions, right? So it's just kind of stupid. So that's the first thing we see is just overall body tightness. Next thing we see, problem is, you're typically gonna fail in one of two spots, right? We typically see people fail right on the chest, and we call that starting power. Or we see people that typically fail somewhere near the top. That would be me. I have some of the closest to lockout fails in the history of powerlifting, where they're like, how didn't he get it? And then literally you'll see the videos be like, because I'm here. Let's talk about starting strength first. Research shows, by the way, the thing that we typically tell people, if they're failing out of the hole, is they need to pause bench, right? Isn't that like rule 101 we teach them? We say you pause bench if you're failing out of the hole. The problem is, you guys understand that we load energy as we come down, right? And I'm not going to use the scientific terms that Fred would use. You understand that we're storing energy on the way down, right? You understand that we're releasing that energy as we press up. Studies have shown that even with a 1 second pause, that we maintain about 45 to 50% of our stored energy. So if I use a pause bench to have an athlete work on their starting strength failures, I'm still giving them a 50% head start on the press. If I want to take that out, anybody know what exercise I can use? Dead press. Dead press is one of my all-time favorite exercises for starting strength. What is a dead press? Now you'll hear these terms used interchangeably, and to me they're not. Again, my Italian grandma made it one way, somebody else makes it somebody else's. You'll hear pin press and dead press interchangeable. To me, a dead press means within 2 inches off the chest, and I really would like to be within 1. Sometimes the geometry of the rack, how fat you are, skinny, doesn't let you get exactly there. But you really want to be under 2 inches for sure. About 1 inch is great, perfect. Sometimes if you can get even ½ inch, I'm fine with that. Closer isn't bad, farther's bad. And then for me, a pin press is anytime I get outside that 2 inch range, because I'm trying to work tricep finishing strength, things of that nature. But dead press is an absolute one of my favorites for starting strength. If you don't do dead press, or you don't have your athletes do dead press, I highly recommend you add it in the routine at some point. When we do dead press, because it's dead press, how many reps can I do in a set? 1. If I do any more than 1, I'm storing energy. So a dead press, I literally make the athlete press, come down, release their hands, and do it again. I don't let them store, and obviously more seconds they're going to release more energy, it's going to leak, but there's no better way to work on starting strength than, so a rep scheme for me on dead press would be like 5 sets of 1, right? And that 5 sets of 1 might be building up to where the last 3 are their actual heaviest weights or whatever the case. But you're never going to do like sets of 2 in dead press. I'll go into gyms all the time and I'll see a guy dead press, bang, and he bounces it. I'm like, and that's the weirdest pause, bounce exercise ever. So I'm not a big fan. Floor press is another exercise I like for starting strength out of the hole. One of the things that's nice about floor press is, for people who have shoulder issues, floor press tends to take a lot of the stress off the shoulders. The other thing that floor press does that I'm a fan of is that floor press does now take what out of the equation? Takes the legs out, right? And I told you I didn't like when people put their legs up on the bench, because to me, if I'm benching, if I'm flat benching, I'm trying to match what I have to do in a competition to do well. So when I go floor press, I'm doing a completely separate exercise. I'm not getting my positioning, but I'm also not messing up what I'm trying to, in wrestling they talk about neuromuscular, right? Like when in wrestling practice, when you ever wrestle, you switch 1,000 times, right? You just switch, switch, switch. And that's so that when somebody goes like this in a meet, you immediately switch. Well, for me, when I'm on this flat bench, I want to be setting up in the positions I use to flat bench. So when I go dead press, it's not really going to do it, but it carries over nicely. But that's another starting strength exercise I really like.
The safety thing on the floor press for the shoulders, do you think it's because of the extra support the floor gives, or the shortened range of motion?
I think it's both. I think because you're able to actually take the shoulder and go into the floor, it provides support for the floor, and you're not getting that extended thing that you're going to get on a bench. Especially, this West carries a relatively wide bench. The narrower the bench, the more the shoulders are going to flex as part of that. So that's the starting strength issue. Finishing strength. If we're talking about finishing strength, what we're really typically talking about is the triceps. So obviously, and again, there's 100 tricep exercises. I'm a big fan of a couple that I like. JM presses. Anybody know what a JM press is? All right. What's the guy's name? John Mark something. A JM press is basically a hybrid. What's that? Blakely. Thank you. John Mark Blakely. But a JM's press is a hybrid exercise to a skull crusher that enables a lifter to take the weight. And what you do is, instead of a skull crusher where I lock this completely, and then I come here, right? Which is doing a lot of what to this? A lot of pressure, especially if you're a big bencher, and big bencher is a relative term. If I'm Blanca and I'm a 200-pound bencher and I start putting 100 pounds of pressure on those elbows, I'm gonna help get some tendonitis going. I'm begging it to come. So the JM press, it's still gonna have that skull crusher motion, but by sinking in as I do it, I'm taking some of that pressure off that elbow. And then I'm able to go ahead and drive through and finish. Similar to a JM press is a Dix press. Dix press is named because the guy's name was Dix. It has nothing to do with anything else. And a Dix press is nothing more than you do the press, you come down, you rotate up, long head, come back, and press it again. It's another good tricep exercise. I'm not a huge board guy because, by the way, almost everything I've told you today has been based on raw lifting. So I didn't say that. I should have said it out of the start. Geared lifters have different modalities, different reasoning for what they do. Do geared lifters need to worry about the negative motion of the bar? Do they need to worry about the static motion of the bar? They really have to just worry about the drive of the bar. As a raw lifter, we don't get that advantage. We have to worry about the negative.
How do you feel about the slingshot for raw lifters to improve the bench press tightness?
I'm okay with it. again, I don't typically ever use it for my standard bench. I like it in close grip situations. And my fear with the slingshot, and I use it some, so for full disclosure, we got 18 of them over there. And we have rams and slingshots and all that crap. But I like it for some close grip work. I like that it allows you to overload, right? I like that it allows you to beat it up a little bit and feel that heavier weight at the top. My fear with it as a coach is that a lot of lifters tend to hurt themselves with it because they try to use the slingshot as a compensatory device. So they try to really, right? Remember we said earlier, one of the first things we said is a bench press shouldn't look like a down, stop here. We said it should look like a crossbow, tick, 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 boom. Well, instead of getting tight here, they try to stretch it as hard as they can and throw it back the other way. So you'll see people tear pecs with the slingshot all day long because they expect the slingshot to do too much of the work. And unfortunately, what I see happening, and again, I'm not putting it down, I use it, but I always say to my lifter before I tell them on their set, gotta stay tight, gotta stay tight, gotta stay tight, gotta stay tight. So that's one of the things. When it comes to board work, I'm not a huge board work guy because we are raw lifters, but I do like 2 and 3 boards for finishing strength. I'll take a lifter to where that fail is and have them go to that fail and come out. And that's a good exercise for that. But that's that.
Hey, thank you, Richard. That was amazing bench press advice. I know we'll all benefit from that. Now, if you like that, you're gonna love this. The 7 fastest ways to increase your bench press. It's a free report just for you. Click this box right here, enter your email, and we'll send you this free report. Now, if you're on a mobile device, you can't click that box. So check the description area below. Look for that top link, criticalbench.com/YouTube. That's the link you want to click. Enter your email, we'll send you that free report. Now be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave some comments or questions for us so we can reach out to you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.